investigate. What I always say about houses.
Ouch. If you want to know, just ask Zoopla.
This is Millie discovering the sound of saving money on Vinted. She bagged an amazing deal on second-hand shoes from her favourite brand. And with members all over the country, there's loads of unique pieces. Download Vinted today.
Nothing beats a Jet2 holiday. Book now with just a £60 deposit per person. And don't miss out. We have millions of free child place holidays available. Jet2 Holidays. Package holidays you can trust. Aptronato protected.
We're going to war, baby. I don't like it.
The bad? Not ideal, yeah. You got an arrow in your arm.
They don't know who they're up against.
Plebs, Soldiers of Rome, a feature-length adventure. Stream free on ITV1.
This week, our couples face an absolute handful.
They'll skate with some very tricky objects when Props Week returns.
That's this Sunday at 6:30.
Claire Spears was 14 years old when she was murdered.
I've got something!
The jury is everything.
12 ordinary people with 12 ordinary lives. We need to persuade every one of them the truth.
The trial is really getting to you.
All you have to do is secure an acquittal.
The 12. Stream free on ITV1.
With all the very latest from around the world and here at home now, it's the ITV News.
Migrant tragedy off the Italian coast. At least 59 people, including children, have drowned. Their boat appears to have broken up as it was attempting to land. Rescuers are still searching for survivors. Edging towards a new Brexit deal, the EU Commission President will meet Rishi Sunak tomorrow. All to play for at Wembley as Manchester United take on Newcastle in the Carabao Cup final. And
Olivia, you have done so much for us, just being the human being that you are.
stars line up to remember Olivia Newton-John.
This is ITV News with Romilly Weeks.
Good evening. Dozens of migrants have drowned within sight of the Italian shore after their overloaded boat broke up as they attempted to land. The bodies of at least 59 people, including children and a baby, have been recovered. It's thought their boat had left Turkey 3 days ago. 80 survivors are being cared for by the Italian authorities, who are still searching for others in rough seas off Calabria. Pope Francis says he's praying for the dead, the missing, and those who've survived. Rebecca Barry has the latest.
This is what the Coast Guard discovered on the shores of southern Italy in the early hours of this morning. The carcass of a boat, along with the bodies of dozens of people, including a baby. In daylight, the wreck of the boat which carried and killed the migrants was still being pummeled by the deadly waters. It's thought more than 100 people had been on board, attempting to cross the rough seas off the coast of Calabria. You can hear the strong winds in this interview with the local mayor. They're still being found, he says. A policeman just pulled the body of a 2-year-old out of the water. Families who'd been so desperate to reach here. Some did make it. Around 80 people survived, having escaped horrors at home, now burdened with even more. It's thought they came from several countries, including Afghanistan, Syria and Iran.
Già sono stati recuperati 40 morti, tra cui molti bambini.
During his address in St. Peter's Square, Pope Francis said he was praying for the dead, the missing and those who survived.
E per gli altri migranti sopravvissuti.
More than 200 migrants are thought to have died in these waters so far this year. Italy's right-wing government recently imposed tough new laws on charities rescuing people. Humanitarian groups say that's further endangering lives.
These are the ones that we see, but how many others we don't see? How many others, because of not being there, of not being present over there, and also limiting the access to the NGOs. So tragedies are happening all the time.
Italy's Prime Minister has blamed inhumane people traffickers and is promising to do more to prevent the crossings. Rebecca Barry, ITV News.
After weeks of intense negotiations, this evening it appears a new Brexit deal for Northern Ireland is inching closer. In the last hour, Downing Street has said the President of the EU Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, will head to London tomorrow for talks with the Prime Minister. Our political correspondent, Harry Horton, has the latest.
Prime Ministers have tried before.
I think the country requires fresh leadership.
And failed to face down their own Eurosceptic backbenchers.
Of course, much remains to be done.
While others promised to get Brexit done.
And we will do a new deal, a better deal.
But now Rishi Sunak has vowed to finish the job as he prepares to unveil his new Northern Ireland Protocol. Tomorrow, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen will visit the UK hoping to sign a new agreement. But ready to knock down any deal, Rishi Sunak's predecessor, Boris Johnson, who's been in touch with backbench colleagues this week. And unionists in Northern Ireland who say they won't return to power-sharing government until their concerns are addressed. But ministers are confident they can win them over.
I'm confident that with the changes that I've alluded to, and if we can secure them, these are exactly the things that Conservatives, the ERG, myself, someone who resigned as Brexit Secretary over the Northern Ireland Protocol, and the DUP have called for. If we can secure those changes, I'm hopeful there'll be a way forward. Okay.
The existing protocol means an effective trade border in the Irish Sea has slowed the flow of goods from Great Britain to Northern Ireland. A new deal is expected to include customs checks-free green lanes for goods staying in Northern Ireland, while goods destined for the Republic of Ireland, which remains in the EU, will continue to face checks in a red lane. Labour says it's willing to offer its support.
It does mean that we can get closer relations with the European Union. There's a whole range of things that we've not been able to discuss. And so if Rishi Sunak is able to stand up to those in his party that would say you shouldn't strike a deal, that must be a good thing in the national interest.
The Prime Minister has promised to allow Parliament to express its view. How and when isn't yet clear. But Rishi Sunak hopes he can soon put this latest Brexit battle behind him.
Harry, this visit has been delayed once already. Why is it so important?
Well, it tells us that a deal is very likely to be presented tomorrow. Not certain, but certainly very likely. And there have been these intense discussions between the UK and the EU over recent weeks. And Downing Street believes they've managed to extract quite significant concessions from the European Union on this new deal. And crucially, they think it meets the threshold of what the DUP have been asking for in Northern Ireland. Now, until we see the legal text, of course, we won't know for sure. There have been some grumblings from backbench MPs and from the DUP in recent days, but no real outright criticism. And I think the Prime Minister will be encouraged by that. But as ever with Brexit, you never quite know what's going to happen. I think the next 24 hours are going to be pretty crucial for the Prime Minister if he wants to get this deal approved by his backbenchers and the DUP.
Harry, thank you. The first results from Nigeria's hotly contested election are expected later. It's the country's tightest presidential race since the end of military rule more than 20 years ago. But the process has been hampered by widespread delays and, in some cases, attacks on polling stations. And Vladimir Putin has accused the West of trying to dismantle Russia. In an address on state television, the president said he had no choice but to pull out of NATO's nuclear treaty, saying the West only has one goal: to liquidate his country. More than 2 years after a toddler died from a respiratory condition caused by living in a mouldy flat in Rochdale, the government has announced further plans to drive up standards. Social housing managers will now be required to study for qualifications to make the sector more professional. And Danny Sinner is here with more. Danny, will this make a difference?
Well, hopefully it will make a big difference. I mean, this is a step change for the government. They're now calling for social housing managers to have proper qualifications, really to drive up standards. I mean, some might say, why has it taken this length of time? Only 5 years ago, of course, we had the Grenfell fire disaster, and that in itself exposed all those social injustices. And more recently, of course, we had the death of a 2-year-old in Rochdale, and he died because he was exposed to black mould. Now, Awak Ishak's parents had pleaded with their landlord repeatedly to get that removed. I mean, just look at it. But of course, they were ignored. And they, of course, paid the ultimate price, losing their son. And again, that shone a light on the injustices that many people face when it comes to social housing. Now, not long after that case, you may remember that Housing Minister Michael Gove, he was invited by ITV News to see with his own eyes the sort of terrible conditions that other residents in the same estate as Awab were actually living. Now, he went along, he was shocked by what he saw, and he vowed to do something about it. Now, earlier this month, he announced what's known as Awab's Law, so landlords have a set amount of time to either fix the damp or mould, and today he's going a lot further. He's now saying that thousands of people need to get the proper qualifications to bring about that change.
Right, Danny, thank you. A 6th man has been arrested in connection with the attempted murder of a senior police officer in Northern Ireland. Detective Chief Inspector John Caldwell is still in a critical condition in hospital after he was shot at a sports centre in Omagh in front of his young son. Newcastle fans arrived at Wembley in force this afternoon, hoping for their first major domestic trophy since 1955. But their opponents, Manchester United, were never going to make it easy. With minutes to go, they are 2-0 up. And Chris Scudder is at Wembley tonight. Chris, looking like disappointment for Newcastle fans.
Yeah, it is about 20 minutes still to play. United to Manchester, that is 2-0 up against Newcastle, who had looked forward to this day for so long. 68 long years, but 2 goals in the first half. Let's just show you how that has transpired so far. First half hour is pretty tight, but the first goal scored by Casemiro, the Brazilian, signed from Real Madrid. They weren't sure if he was offside. The VAR, video assistant referee, had a look at that, but eventually the goal was given by the officials. That was 1-0. And then Marcus Rashford, who's having such a fantastic season for Manchester United, scoring the second pass, the stand-in Newcastle goalkeeper, Loris Karius. So 2-0 United leading at the moment. But the whole occasion has been fantastic, really. As you say, 68 long years, the Newcastle fans arriving here full of hope. The richest club in the world against perhaps the biggest club in the world, Manchester United. And the fans have had a ball on both sides.
The atmosphere is unbelievable. We sorted up yesterday, we came down on the train early on. Great, absolutely fantastic.
It's great for Newcastle to be here, but I don't want Newcastle to win. I think getting here is a big achievement for them. For us, it is not an achievement unless we win.
The fact that we're here, it's just unbelievable. Like, you can see from everyone that's here, the fans are just absolutely buzzing.
Yeah, those Newcastle fans saying just being here is a triumph, really. They've got all that Saudi money behind them, and one day their time will come, but it's looking right now as it's not going to be today. The old hands, Manchester United beating the new money of Newcastle. 2-0 with a few minutes to go.
Chris at Wembley, thank you. And England's not the only place where a cup final is being contested. Earlier, old foes Celtic and Rangers locked horns in the Viaplay Cup final. Japanese winger Kyogo Furuhashi put Celtic ahead in the all-Glasgow affair just before half-time, and he's doubled his side's lead early in the second half. Alfredo Morelos was the man in the right place as Rangers pulled one back, but it was the boys celebrating with their fans at full-time. In rugby, France have beaten Scotland in a tense Six Nations tie. 2 players were sent off in the first 20 minutes, with Scotland 19-0 down in the first half. They fought back, but in the end it wasn't enough to beat the home side, as Neil Connery reports.
Few would have expected Scotland and not France to have their Grand Slam hopes intact.
as the Six Nations headed into round 3. But the visitors knew today would be tough. And France were quick to show why. Dupont found Ntamak, who headed around Steyn to score.
What a start!
After both sides had players sent off, France powered ahead as Russell's efforts were intercepted by Ramos, whose try was met with a deafening roar. But Scotland fought back as Russell played a flat pass for Hugh Jones to finish. Into the second half, and there was no stopping Jones as he scored his second try, keeping Scotland's hopes alive.
It's Jones once more, rolling and scoring.
Price and Russell then led the charge as the visitors edged their way closer. But France were to have the final word as Ficou scored a try to break Scottish hearts. Neil Connery, ITV News.
Finally, when Elton John, Cliff Richard and Dolly Parton appear at the same event, you know it must be something special. They've all shared their memories of Olivia Newton-John at her state memorial in Australia 6 months after her death, as Lewis Warner reports.
6 months on from her death, a celebration of a life that brought so much joy, as the stars she inspired came to say farewell.
She is literally the reason why I started performing, and I was lucky enough to tell her that the first time we met.
At the memorial event in Melbourne, there were reflections from those closest to her.
Wow. She was my safe space, my guide, my biggest fan, and the earth beneath my feet.
And tributes from those who admired from afar.
But she was funny, she was kind, she was warm, and she was talented.
Olivia, to quote one of your songs, I honestly love you.
I'd like to rip my heart out and leave it with all of you and just say, Olivia, you have done so much for us, just being the human being that you are.
It was her stunning career spanning 6 decades, achieving 4 Grammy Awards and selling 100 million records that brought so much applause. And of course, the movie that made her. But her husband revealed what he believes was her real talent.
She walked out on the stage and started singing Pearls on a Chain. And there was this healing moving through the audience. People around me were crying. And I got it. It hit me like a laser beam in the chest that Olivia was a healer.
Australian singer Delta Goodrem performed a medley of Olivia's songs to end the service. In front of 2,500 people, this was Olivia's true final performance. The last act of a life that lit up so many others. Lewis Warner, ITV News.
And that's all from the evening news team. I'm back with the late news at 10. Until then, good evening.
There'll be some light cloud early on today, but by lunchtime it will almost certainly clear. Heinz Seriously Good Mayonnaise sponsors ITV National Weather.
Hello again, I hope you've had a lovely weekend. This week, February will be ending on a quiet note. More of the same. High pressure dominates, so it's generally dry across the UK. Just the odd shower over the next few days, some good sunny spells to look forward to, and we're in for average temperatures. The details for tonight, where we have cloud cover and some drizzle, we avoid a frost, but either side under clear skies, temperatures will fall well below freezing tonight, and there'll be a further feed of showers moving in from the North Sea into the southeast and parts of East Anglia before dawn. On to Monday's details, a fine start across England and Wales. Glorious sunshine again for northern, western Scotland and Northern Ireland during the day tomorrow. Into the afternoon, slightly more cloud for southern and eastern areas, and showers will continue on and off through the day there. Temperatures, though, are around average for the time of year. 8 to 10 Celsius and feeling pleasant, certainly out of that breeze during tomorrow afternoon. And more to come over the next few days, staying nice and quiet. Bye-bye.
Heinz Seriously Good Mayonnaise sponsors ITV National Weather.
Rishi Sunak has a new policy, which is that you don't put a government minister up every day.
It's a mistake. Get somebody on the TV.
It's called being held to account.
No, this is being held to account.
I know everybody'd vote you for Chancellor if you would even think about it.
First thing I'd do if I was Chancellor?
What?
Resign.
The current Education Secretary grilled by the former Education Secretary. This is one that you will not want to miss. Holding ministers to account is an important part of this programme.
Good Morning Britain, weekdays from 6.
Taking a look at the latest where you are now. It's the ITV News.